My name is Hannah Whitaker, and the night I finally snapped was Christmas Eve. The tree in my parents' living room sparkled with ornaments I'd hung as a child, the smell of roast turkey filling the air, laughter echoing off the walls, but none of it felt warm. I was 34 years old, sitting at the table with the same relatives who had been draining me, belittling me, and using me for years, and I realized I wasn't family to them. I was furniture. I was a wallet. I was their scapegoat. And when my uncle raised his glass and said, "Hannah's still single because she's too busy being everyone's doormat," something inside me cracked so loud I swear I heard it echo in my bones. That was the night my breaking point came. The night I decided I wouldn't just walk away from my toxic relatives. I would make them choke on the poison they'd fed me my whole life. Growing up in Nottingham, I was the responsible one. The oldest daughter, the quiet one, the achiever. My parents leaned on me from the start, babysitting my younger cousins, tutoring my siblings, smoothing over family fights. And because I wanted so badly to be loved, I complied. Every Christmas I was the one helping cook. Every birthday party I was the one cleaning up. Every crisis I was the one called first. At first I wore it like a badge of honor. "Hannah can handle it," they'd say, and I'd beam with pride. But as the years passed, that pride curdled into resentment. Because handling it meant giving up parts of myself. My time. My money. My peace. It wasn't just chores or favors. It was the constant digs, the subtle cruelty disguised as jokes. At 16, when I got my first boyfriend, my aunt sneered, "Don't scare him off with that big mouth of yours." At 22, when I earned my degree, my cousin muttered, "Book smart, life dumb." At 28, when I scraped together enough to buy my own flat, my mother's voice was sharp with envy. "Don't get too proud, it's not like you'll keep a man at this rate." And through it all, I smiled. Because that's what I was trained to do. Smile and absorb it like a sponge, hoping that if I gave enough, eventually they'd give love back. They never did. By my 30s, the exploitation had escalated. When my sister racked up credit card debt, guess who co-signed the loan? When my cousin Liam crashed his car drunk, guess who paid the insurance excess? Me. Always me. They never asked, not really, they demanded, dressed up as guilt. "If you really loved us, Hannah, you'd help." And I did. I drained my savings, put my dreams on hold, cancelled trips I'd planned. Every time, I told myself it was just one more sacrifice. But sacrifices add up, and I was bleeding out quietly while they laughed. Christmas Eve was the crescendo. I had spent hours cooking, wrapping presents, making sure everything was perfect. And as we sat down to dinner, I listened to them toast themselves, brag about their jobs, their kids, their houses. When it was my turn, the comments flew like darts. "Still single, Hannah? Maybe lower your standards. No kids yet. TikTok. Oh, she's the rich one, she'll cover the wine." And then my uncle made his joke about me being a doormat, and everyone roared with laughter. Everyone but me. I stared at my plate, my vision blurring, my chest so tight I could hardly breathe. My mind screamed, "Enough. Enough being their servant. Enough being their joke. Enough bleeding for people who wouldn't spit on me if I were on fire." That night, lying awake in my childhood bedroom, I began to plot. Not escape. No. Revenge. Because walking away would have been too easy for them. They'd twist it, paint me as the ungrateful one, the problem. No, I wanted them exposed. I wanted them to taste humiliation, to feel the sting of betrayal, to understand that the woman they called a doormat had teeth sharp enough to cut them to pieces. So I started small. I gathered receipts, literally and figuratively. Bank transfers I'd made for them. Texts where they guilt-tripped me. Emails begging me for help. I compiled it all, every act of exploitation they'd buried under family loyalty. And then I started listening more closely, letting them think I was still pliable, while tucking away their gossip, their secrets, their affairs. Toxic families always hide rot under the rug. Mine had plenty. And I was done protecting them. The weeks after Christmas, I moved through my family's world like a ghost, smiling when expected, nodding in agreement, all while sharpening my knives in silence. Every phone call became evidence, every favor they asked became ammunition. When my sister rang me sobbing about her debt again, I calmly asked her to text me the details, so I wouldn't forget. She did, and I saved the messages. When my cousin Liam tried to guilt me into paying for a family trip to Spain, I said I'd think about it and asked for the itinerary. I saved that too. Piece by piece, I was building a mosaic of their greed. And then there were the whispers. My aunt confided to me after too much wine that her husband had been messaging an old flame on Facebook. My brother muttered about fiddling his taxes. My mother let slip that she'd lied to her friends about paying for her new kitchen when, in truth, it was my father's gambling winnings. They thought I was their vault, their safe space to dump secrets. What they didn't realize was that vaults can crack open. I listened, smiled sympathetically, and tucked away every confession like a dagger in my sleeve. At the same time, I began to change how I responded to them. Instead of giving outright, I delayed. "Oh, I'll transfer the money next week. I'll check my schedule and get back to you." This bought me time, but more importantly, it made them reveal their desperation. The more I withheld, the more frantic they became, texting, calling, guilt-tripping harder than ever. Their dependence on me was like a chain around their necks, and I was starting to tug it. I also started watching them closely in public. Family gatherings, neighborhood barbecues, birthdays, anywhere they paraded their perfect images. My relatives thrived on reputation, on being seen as respectable, generous, better than everyone else. That was their Achilles heel. I realized my revenge didn't need to be violent or loud. It just needed to be public. Exposure was the weapon, and I had all the ammunition I needed. The turning point came one Sunday dinner in February. My mother sat across from me, bragging about how she'd helped my sister get her finances under control. She smiled sweetly as she told the table that family always takes care of each other. My stomach burned, my fists clenched under the table, because I knew the truth. She hadn't helped. I had. I drained my savings for my sister while my mother claimed the credit. And everyone nodded along, praising her selflessness. That was the moment I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to flip the narrative. I was going to drag their skeletons out of the closet and lay them bare in the middle of their polished dining room. So I crafted my plan. It started with a letter. Well, more like a dossier. I printed out copies of every transfer, every screenshot, every message. I typed up their secrets in black and white, no embellishment, just the raw, ugly truth. An affair. A tax fraud. A gambling debt. A lie about who really paid for what. I bound it all together, neatly labeled by name, and sealed each one in an envelope. It was meticulous, almost clinical. Each page I slid into those envelopes was another pound of flesh I was taking back. But I didn't stop there. I scheduled the reveal for Easter Sunday, the holiest day of the year for my devout family. They loved to pack into the church, then gather at my parents' house for a feast, acting like the perfect Christian clan. The irony of detonating my bomb on that day made me smile for the first time in months. Because what better day to resurrect myself from their chains than the day they worshipped resurrection itself? That night, as I slid the envelopes into my handbag, I whispered to myself, "They made me their doormat. Now I'll make them my stage." And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful. Easter morning dawned bright and deceptively peaceful, birdsong floating through the crisp Nottingham air as if mocking the storm I was about to unleash. I dressed carefully, deliberately. A pale blue dress, polished shoes, hair neatly curled, the image of a dutiful daughter. No one would suspect that beneath the fabric of respectability I was carrying a set of grenades disguised as envelopes. At church, I sat in the pew with my family, listening to the priest speak about forgiveness, about sacrifice, about rising above those who hurt you. My lips pressed into a thin smile, because forgiveness was not what I came for. I had been sacrificed enough times on that altar. Today was about resurrection, yes, But it was my resurrection, born not from grace but from fire. After the service, we drove to my parents' house. The dining room table was dressed in pastel linens, ham and potatoes laid out, wine glasses gleaming. My relatives bustled around, laughing, teasing, basking in the smug glow of family tradition. I played my part, passing dishes, pouring drinks, even forcing a laugh or two. My heart pounded in my chest, but my face stayed calm. They had no idea the ground beneath them was about to split open. Halfway through the meal, my uncle raised his glass to toast. "Here's to family," he declared, "the ones who stick together no matter what." The irony nearly made me choke. And as the glasses clinked, I reached into my handbag and pulled out the stack of envelopes. "I actually have something for everyone," I said, my voice steady but cutting through the chatter like a blade. Chairs squeaked as they turned toward me, curiosity sparking. I slid the envelopes across the table, each one addressed neatly in my handwriting. "Go on. Open them." For a beat, there was only silence. Then the sound of paper tearing. I watched faces shift. Confusion, shock, anger. My aunt's cheeks drained of color as she read the screenshots of her husband's messages. My brother paled at the photocopy of his falsified tax return. My mother's hand trembled over the printout of my bank transfer receipts, every pound I had given while she claimed the glory. My sister gasped, staring at the record of her debts, every late notice, every manipulative text. "What the hell is this?" Liam spat, his voice rising. "It's the truth," I said simply. My calmness seemed to enrage them more than shouting would have. "For years you've mocked me, used me, leaned on me like I was your crutch. You called me a doormat. Well, this doormat kept records. And now the dirt you've wiped onto me is out in the open." The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Denials. Accusations. Curses. My mother's eyes burned with fury as she hissed, "How dare you humiliate us like this?" "How dare I?" I leaned forward, my voice cold and deliberate. "How dare you? All of you. I've spent my life bleeding for this family while you laughed at me behind my back. You thought I'd never fight back. You were wrong." The shouting continued, but I didn't care. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos reigned. My aunt sobbing, my uncle swearing, my siblings bickering as blame bounced around the room like shrapnel. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I'd planted the bomb, and it had gone off. That night, my phone buzzed non-stop. Calls, texts, voicemails. Some begging, some threatening, some dripping with venom. I let it all ring out. For the first time in my life, I wasn't on the hook. They were. I sat by my window, the city lights flickering below, and felt the strangest thing. Peace. Not the hollow peace of silence after an argument, but a deep, marrow-deep calm. Because I had finally chosen myself. And I knew this was only the beginning of their unraveling. The unraveling came faster than I expected. Within a week, the cracks I'd forced open at Easter spread like fractures through glass. My aunt stopped showing up at church, too ashamed after whispers began circulating about her husband's messages. My cousin Liam's employer discovered his creative tax filings when someone, anonymously, sent a copy of the documents I'd compiled to HR. My sister's friends started pulling away after learning just how deep her debts ran, and that she had been leaning on me like a human bank. The fortress of lies they had built for themselves was collapsing, and all I had done was hold up a mirror. My mother was the loudest in her rage. She called me in the middle of the night, screaming, "You've destroyed this family. Do you understand what you've done?" I let her rant until she ran out of breath. Then I said the words I'd never dared say before. "You destroyed it yourselves. I just stopped covering for you." The silence on the line was thick, heavy, almost satisfying. She hung up, and I knew she finally realized her grip on me was gone. But it wasn't just about vengeance for me. It was about liberation. 4 years, my life had been dictated by their demands. Now, the weight was gone. I started focusing on myself. I took on a new project at work I'd been too drained to attempt before. I rejoined a book club, met people outside the suffocating circle of family. For the first time, I had money left at the end of the month because no one was siphoning it away. The air felt different, lighter. Still, there were moments of unease. At my cousin's birthday, I wasn't invited. At church, certain relatives turned cold eyes toward me. My absence at family dinners became fodder for gossip. Hannah thinks she's too good for us now. But instead of stinging, it rolled off me. They had always seen me as a tool, not a person. If cutting myself free meant I was the villain in their story, so be it. I'd rather be the villain than their victim. The real climax came at my parents' anniversary party in June. Against my better judgment, I went. Part curiosity, part closure. The atmosphere was strained from the start, laughter forced, conversations brittle. When my mother stood to give a speech about family unity, I almost laughed. But then, to my astonishment, she said, "Sometimes we lose sight of how we treat the ones who hold us up. And sometimes it takes a hard lesson to make us see what we've done." She didn't look at me directly, but I felt the weight of her words. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was the closest thing I'd ever get. After the speech, my uncle approached me with a glass of wine. His voice was low, grudging. "You cut deep, Hannah. But maybe we needed it." His eyes darted away, shame simmering beneath his bluster. That was enough. They would never love me the way I once begged them to. But they would respect me, or at the very least, fear me. And that was a start. In the quiet weeks that followed, I realized something vital. Revenge hadn't just hurt them, it had freed me. I no longer bent under their weight. I was standing tall, alone maybe, but finally whole. And when I thought back to that Christmas Eve, to the moment my uncle called me a doormat, I smiled. Because that doormat had learned how to burn bridges so thoroughly that no one could ever wipe their feet on me again. If you enjoyed this revenge story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from.